types of cultural activities. But what you could do is package the actual oral tradition that's always been true to black culture, which is part of the West African culture, which is part of the griot, and produce a product that then could be sold and marketed and repeated and replicated and all of those types of things for the purpose of being able to generate revenue. Well, this is considered your most inauthentic level of hip-hop, but today we're going to talk about how that's challenged in the context of hip-hop being universal. So, to get to the heart of things, hip-hop as a commodity then becomes universal, and it expands to the extent by which other cultures are able to embrace it. This speaks to what Christ wanted to address, and I believe that he also addresses in his paper for this class, where the cultural aspect of Afrocentricity, the cultural aspect of just black culture as a whole, even when you aren't framing it in the theoretical context of Afrocentricity, is something where black people engage in particular types of behaviors. For my field of interest, it's typically communicative behaviors. And so it's call and response. It's looking for a head nod as nonverbal communication to signal that you are accepting and receiving what it is that I'm sending. Because in black culture, as really exists in many cultures of color that are non-white, you oftentimes have a call and response where there is a sense of agreement that's attempted to be made between the speaker and the audience, and that there is no separation between the speaker and the audience as you communicate. I'm looking for verbal cues or nonverbal cues from you all that suggest you understand what I'm saying, that you're in agreement with what I'm saying, and if you aren't, that I, as the speaker, have the responsibility of addressing that in a context that then provides, yet and still, some sense of agreement, some sense of harmony. And so, from a black cultural perspective, at least in the context that I can speak on, which is communications, hip-hop is transferable as far as its universal appeal to other cultures, in that when it is a hip-hop commodity, it presents an opportunity in its most diluted form for other cultures, Asian cultures, Caucasian cultures, to understand very basic principles. And the principles are indeed very basic. They are rhyme and repetition. They are about dance and rhythm. Sometimes the rhythm part is not so much what people would want to expect, but nevertheless, it's about rhyme and rhythm. And so, as hip-hop is sort of broadened in terms of people's consumption, people's understanding, people's exposure and experience to it, it does what it was intended to do for those communities, what it has historically done for African American communities, which is establish some sense of liberation. It establishes some sense of independence where you get to say who you are despite whatever powers or institutions that be try to create mechanisms of oppression, whether that's through socioeconomic policies, whether that's through psychological paradigms that say you're less than, or you're crazy, or you have to be insane, or you're savage, or you're uncivilized. And so, as a commodity, although people in the black community that are oftentimes entrenched in the culture of hip-hop will say, hip-hop as a commodity has no value, it's inauthentic, it isn't really a representation of what real hip-hop culture is, it is a basis and a platform for other cultures to then turn around and indoctrinate themselves with something that is actually from black culture and be able to establish meaning for it in their own context. Although this could have several arguments that are placed against it, one of the resounding arguments that still makes this evident and true as far as its relationship to black culture is that when you extend research all the way back to Africa and you look at the rhetorical forms of communication, you look at methods of how the community and culture will come together to establish forms of just relating and understanding what types of messages and meanings were being exchanged between one another, you'll oftentimes find that it was through the rhythm of the speaker, it was through movement, it was through music, it was through performance, it was through a variety of different art forms that people were able to establish relationships with one another and begin to understand communicatively what those relationships were intended to mean. Even when you establish a context for hip-hop in a cultural sense, it still reverts back to even the experience of